like a thinner border for trade, not a thicker one. And allow me once again to repeat that in French. La relation entre nos pays n'a pas d'égal. Elle sert d'exemple au monde entier et il est d'une importance critique pour les gens qui vivent des deux côtés de la frontière, qu'on la maintienne et en fait qu'on l'améliore. Il faut que ce soit fait correctement. Parfois, faire les choses correctement ne veut pas dire nécessairement emprunter le chemin le plus facile sur le plan politique, ni le chemin le plus court. Créer de nouvelles barrières commerciales, ajouter davantage d'obligations de contenu local, donner un accès plus privilégié à des acteurs locaux pour les contrats gouvernementaux, par exemple, n'aide pas les familles de la classe moyenne à long terme, ni même à moyen terme. Les politiques de ce genre affaiblissent la croissance et nuisent aux travailleurs qu'elles devraient protéger. Une telle approche peut facilement engendrer une dynamique de représailles mutuelles de laquelle personne ne sort gagnant. Now, there are some really great arguments to be made for keeping our border thin when it comes to trade, even as we improve cross-border law enforcement that makes Canadians and Americans safer. Our friends and partners in Michigan and Ohio know well the case of Magna International, a global automotive parts supplier headquartered in Ontario. Founded in 1957, Magna today employs nearly 140,000 workers in 29 countries. Half of those workers are here in North America. And Magna has 65 facilities in the United States, 60 in Canada, and 29 in Mexico. And here's the point. Magna's supply chain spans the border. To a car part, the border is invisible. Canadian components are repeatedly incorporated into more complex products before final assembly. A hydroformed upper crossmember starts in Strathroy, Ontario. It's imported into Michigan for assembly into a carrier and then incorporated into a full front-end module in Ohio. Magna then sends the front-end modules to Chrysler for final assembly, and Chrysler exports the finished Jeeps right around the world. That's teamwork, my friends. Or take Can-Am Group, the parent company of Can-Am Steel. Can-Am is headquartered in Quebec. It employs roughly equal numbers of Canadians and Americans. Its plant in Point of Rock, Maryland, and Claremont, New Hampshire provide jobs that are vital to their communities. Can-Am's market is the construction industry, which is a North American-wide industry, by the way. There are literally too many examples of this to name, whether it's CN in Louisiana, or Hydro-Quebec in Maine, or Cott Corporation in Missouri, or countless other enterprises and projects across the states. Canadian energy, ingenuity, and capital are there helping you build America, just as American energy, ingenuity, and capital are in Canada helping us build our country. And this, ultimately, is why I have such confidence in our shared future, and in the best efforts of every leader in this room and in Washington to nurture this relationship, to make it even better. We really are all in this together. Ambassador McNaughton remarked on the high degree of cooperation and collegiality among the state governors he talked to, including many of you. That pragmatic approach crosses party lines. And I know that's because, as governors, you face common problems and share many of the same goals. I know that you're focused on creating the conditions for good, well-paying jobs for the middle class in your states. Whether Republican or Democrat, in this economy, that's most likely your very first priority. Well, guess what? It's my first priority as well. President Trump has told us all that it's his first priority. We all have this in common. This challenge, how to ensure benefits of commerce and trade are more broadly shared so that every family can look forward to a brighter future, is among the most fundamental of our time. My friends, I believe to my core that the most important challenge we face as elected leaders is that of creating lasting conditions for prosperity and security for all our people in this, our shared North American home. By virtue of our geography, by virtue of our interlinked economies, this is work we are called to do together within a modernized, renewed, and strengthened North American Free Trade Agreement. So I will leave you with this. Let us meet this challenge. Let us keep talking as neighbors and friends should. Let us roll up our sleeves. Let's get to work, and let's keep making history together. Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
So I have the privilege of asking the first question, Mr. Prime Minister, and as Governor McAuliffe said, we as governors have waited 108 years for a foreign head of state to address us, and that's a lot of governors through the years. So a simple question, why us and why now?
I think one of the things that we're seeing is, I mean, there's an immediate context, but there's also a broader context. The immediate context is obviously there's a lot of talk about NAFTA, about benefits or challenges around NAFTA, and for us, just sort of sitting back and hoping it all works out is not really the Canadian way. We have winters that are too harsh for us to be able to do that in general. So we reach out and we think and we plan, and we thought this would be a great opportunity to really step up our engagement across all different levels of the U.S. administration. As many of you know, we were extremely proactive in connecting with President Trump and his administration as they got up and running, but we also realized that connecting better with Congress, reaching out to states right across the country, working with governors, is something that happens every day at all levels of this relationship that we should be a little more thoughtful and deliberate about. And that's the specific context. But I think the general context is that we're in a world that is more and more interdependent, more and more interconnected, and in which people are more and more aware of the challenges that our communities or societies are facing, and more eager to see people working hard, rolling up their sleeves to try and address their worries about their jobs, their future, their kids' futures. And this level of interconnection and pooling of energies to meet these challenges, I think, is part of what citizens hope to see from their leaders in general.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for being with us here today. We appreciate everything that you said earlier. And what we're trying to do with this conference, it's got a big international flair to it. Obviously, you have spoken. We've got folks from Mexico here with us. We've got Vietnam. We've got China. We've got Japan. With the emphasis being that we want businesses and governments to deal directly with governors to grow our economies. Sometimes, I know, as it relates to trade, conflicting messages coming out of Washington today. I just got back last week from a 7-nation European tour everywhere, issues about a border tax and so forth. So what I've tried to convey is come directly to the states. We will do business with you. And I'd ask you today, Mr. Prime Minister, what advice would you give all of us governors? You are already our #1 trading partner, as you are for many of the states here. But as you envision the next 5, 10 years out, what advice would you tell us governors to increase how we do more business with Canada?
First of all, to reflect on what a lot of people take for granted, on how easy the relationship is with Canada. I remember a story of an American, and that goes on both sides of the border as well. I remember an American ambassador who explained to Canada, who explained to me that one of the first things he did was cross the country to try and drum up more business with the United States. And the number of people who said to him, as he was trying to say, you know, you really should think more internationally. And people said, no, 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 we don't do any international sales. We just sell to the States. And the things we take for granted in terms of the easy proximity is something we have to be deliberate about, something we have to be thoughtful about, and look for those opportunities. Look for the complementarities in our economy, and mostly think about reaching out. Encourage your business community, your chambers of commerce to go look at export possibilities with the United States, to welcome in visiting delegations from Canada, and to make Canada the first easy step towards the global economy for many of your small businesses. I mean, it's hard when we think of a global economy, when we think of the communications revolution, it's just as easy to sell your small business products across the street as it is to sell it around the world. You just have to shift your thinking, and if you can open your engagement at that level of already thinking of engaging with Canada and the opportunities there, it becomes then easier to really start to play in the global economy. On the flip side of things, the voices that governors have within the American system, both towards the federal government, but also connected with folks on the ground in your communities, whether it's business leaders or ordinary families and workers, you are better connected than some folks in Washington to the realities of people in their day-to-day lives, and being that bridge that is showing tangibly the benefits of trade, the benefits of a global perspective, and ensuring through the policy mechanisms that you have that the benefits of growth are being distributed and shared fairly amongst your citizens is something that governors have been and can continue to be extremely active on.
Thank you. I think we have time for a couple governors' questions here. If any of our governors would like to ask the Prime Minister, anybody? Governor Raimondo.
Thank you. Prime Minister, that was an extraordinary speech, and welcome again to Rhode Island. We've spent an awful lot of time over the past day or so talking about the opioid overdose crisis here in America. I think every single governor around this table is struggling with it. Here in my own state, which is a state of only 1 million people, we've lost over 1,000 people to the disease in the past handful of years. And I know this is something that you've taken great action on, could you offer us your advice, what's working, and any words of wisdom that you have on this issue?
Thank you. The opioid crisis is hitting us extremely hard as well, to varying degrees across the country. And I was actually pleased that it was specifically one of the things that President Trump and I were able to agree on and coordinate and collaborate action on when I made my first visit to Washington a number flow of fentanyl, carfentanil, and other opioids, whether it's looking at frontline policing or frontline first responders, making naloxone more available, or whether it's looking at harm reduction, which is something that we've had significant success with in Canada, which is looking at more safe consumption sites where people can be in a safer spot where they're going to be able to be treated if they get an overdose from bad products or overly concentrated opioids. We have solutions that we're happy to talk about and work with you on, and obviously the challenges will vary from region to region, from urban location to rural locations, but we are beginning to see that once what was concentrated in certain areas is now hitting broad communities, young people, suburban retirees, all sorts of folks across the country, and making sure we're thoughtful and coordinated in our approach to this crisis is something that, as good neighbors, friends, and allies, we should certainly be doing. And I welcome the money that's being put forward to it. We've put a lot of money forward towards it as well, but mostly the goodwill of people who are realizing this is a very serious health crisis we need to address responsibly and quickly.
I think we have time for one more. Any other governor here have a question? Governor Carney, thank you. Great
A lot of tough negotiations on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which involve Canada and the U.S., particularly around agricultural products. Do you expect that these negotiations will take up where those left off?
Canada is a country that has understood from the very beginning how important trade is. We've always had more resources than our small population.